something that was a big disconnect for me for a long time was the personal development world of the 80s and 90s is very all or nothing. It's very black and white thinking. Yeah. And as a perfectionist, as a recovering perfectionist, I needed to not have that. I needed to have what I've coined as this imperfect success, as this imperfect gray area of personal development.
Y'all, today's guest, I have never related to someone more. Like, we just did an episode on her podcast. I'll introduce her in a second, but like, it was just wild how one thing after another, I'm like, yep, check that box. Yep, I was a perfectionist. Yes, I was a people pleaser. Check, check, check. And so I'm very, very, very excited that we also get to have her on our podcast. Y'all, please welcome Nicole Baker-Holloman. She is the host of the Imperfect Success podcast, and she helps us break up with the different types of perfection that we all bring with us, because many of us listening to this are those type of perfectionists. So I'm so excited to have you on, mainly because I'm ready to like soak up all your knowledge, just as someone myself who's still working through that. So thanks for being here today, Nicole. I appreciate you.
Fucking pleasure. Like, I'll be straight up honest with you. I found you through our mutual friend, Abby Streiser, and
love you, Abby.
I started listening to your show, and then I started binging your show, and I was like, I'm pretty sure she sees into my soul a little bit. Like, this is a little scary. So it's an honor to be talking with you, J.Go. This is awesome.
Oh, I'm so glad you could be here. So some people might be like, okay, how do we coach on this? When did you realize this is what I need to be doing with my life to help these people? Because you're freaking awesome at it. So how did that come about? I'm very, very curious about your life story. We can go as far early as you want if we want to get into the childhood shit, but like wherever you want to start, I'm open to it. Let's go.
So I think it does actually go back to childhood, really.
It always does.
It always does, doesn't it? I think therapy has taught me. It really does. I grew up in a family that was very heavily immersed in the personal development world, right? Both my parents worked for a lot of the major air quote gurus that you would call the personal development leaders, Tony Robbins, mainly one of them. And I would go to these seminars. I'd attend the fire walks. I'd watch these people go through these insane process of transformation and just have this like moment from I'm not enough to I am enough. And I remember just watching those people and being like, oh my God, there's nothing more amazing than this. There's nothing more amazing. But in that process, I was a very extroverted kid. I liked talking. I was a very performer at heart, if you will. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I started getting to like middle school, a little bit even earlier in elementary school. And there was just this like massive target painted on my back almost. I also grew up in a town that I like to dark joke about how basically if you can't run a sub 4 mile in this town, you're fat. And I was a very chubby kid. And it was a really tough place. And I was bullied for many, many years until the one point where I was literally stuffed into a bathroom. I was called names that I will literally never utter to another human soul on this planet. And something in me snapped in that bathroom that said, if I'm not quiet, if I'm not submissive, if I'm not what everyone else needs me to be, I get hurt. And so this intense perfectionism clouded my entire judgment, and it kept with me for a really long time. Now, that performer still really stuck with me. So I actually ended up going into more musical theater. That's how I started finding a little bit more of my voice. The irony that it wasn't really my own. Like
still
it was
so
the
great.
Characters I was portraying, which is a very main character energy, but like it was my experience. And so I am still very a high achiever at heart. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the best college in the US for musical theater. I'm going to be on Broadway, I did end up going to a very, very good college. It's one of the best in the nation. And the perfectionism still was really gripping me to the point where I was having almost daily panic attacks. I was drinking myself to blackout every weekend just to numb my anxiety. I was so overwhelmed that I was procrastinating on bigger things. And that all boiled up into the point where my professor finally sat me down and he said, you can't graduate. Like, I am literally, here's your degree. I'm going to take it away from you unless you get your fucking shit together. He said it much kinder. That's just my headcanon. But finally, I just called my dad and I was like, I've known about this personal development-ish my entire life. But if I don't start implementing it, which was always the missing piece, if I don't start implementing it right now, my literal dream is on the line. And very kindly, he coached me for like months and months. Long story short, I did end up graduating, but the bigger gift that gave me is it made me realize what is happening in our brain is what produces our results. Something that was a big disconnect for me for a long time was the personal development world of the 80s and 90s is very all or nothing. It's very black and white thinking. Yep. And as a perfectionist, as a recovering perfectionist, I needed to not have that. I needed to have what I've coined as this imperfect success, as this imperfect gray area of personal development. And so I spent a few years really diving into that, seeing what that looks like. I started coaching people in the performance world on doing this. And then I realized it was the perfectionist tendencies that I was really obsessed with. I guess it's a really weird way of saying it. But I've now been coaching perfectionists for 5 years, and it has been a wild ride. Let me tell you, I feel like every day I learn something new about the perfectionist mind, and it's exactly the way I want it to be.
I, yes, very much relate to the background of bullying, but I think it's really amazing that you saw it as like, this is my chance to step in. Like, it was on the line. I'm ready to go all in. And now you're helping other people. And so you said recovering perfectionist. So you've worked through that. Where did you start? Were you like, okay, I'm going to get my shit together, and then it's clicked, and then now we haven't had to deal with that at all?
Not at
now
all.
We're just helping everyone else with perfect, right? We're perfect and no longer being a perfectionist.
Well, and you and I talked about this on my show. It's like the whole overnight success is just like the biggest crack of bullshit. I've been working towards, major air quotes, overcoming perfectionism for about 10 years now. And I've been studying the perfectionist mind. I'm a big neuroscience person. I love the neuroscience side of things. Like, I've been studying all the ins and outs of the intricacies of our psychology. And I still, to this day, like, here's a good example. I'm in the middle of reading this book series right now that I have literally given up my entire world to. I'm pretty sure, like, I'm a huge fantasy reader. I love it. And this thing came into my life, and I have just been able to think of nothing else. And the other morning, I was beating myself up for being like, you're not as productive. You're not as driven as you normally are. This is going to be how you are for the rest of your life. And you're never going to be successful, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm reading a book. I'm reading a fucking book series that brings me so much joy. And the irony is I actually am more productive because I'm trying to get through my day. And that's so I get back to it. But it was just like, okay, wow, these things still pop up for me. Like, I still sometimes am like, you're not doing enough. And then I know how to catch it. That's the big thing. It's not that these thoughts don't happen. They happen much less. I will say that. But it's not that they don't happen. It's that when they do happen, I have now tools that either I've crafted or researched that I now know how to deal with it. That's one thing I talk to my clients a lot about, because I actually just talked about this on stories this morning. A lot of the times when we are noticing we're in a negative spiral, we're like, I need to think positively. How could you not think positively, Nicole? Bad, shame, bad personal development student. And it's like, so you're trying to beat yourself up to be positive, and that's making you positive. How? It's like we shame ourselves, self-flagellate all the
double
time
negative.
To get to the next level. It's that double negative. Exactly. And one of the things I'm really trying to enlighten people on, feels so heavy, but I think this is a pretty heavy topic, is what does it look like to give yourself some mother effing grace, to know that you're a human, to know that you can still be a striver, to know that you can still want more out of life, but you can love the absolute crap out of yourself along the way. And that tends to make people go like, what? Like, that's an option? Because it's just not talked about.
No, it's not. It's like we hold off on loving ourselves until we've hit the goal and we feel worthy of it, which we were talking about a lot on the last episode. And I don't know if you experienced this, because I had to like break up with the shift. And I feel like there might be a lot of people in here that are all about the knowledge, and they take it all in, and they're like, I have been listening to Nicole's podcast and I love it and I learn everything. But then sometimes we get stuck on, now I know the why behind my procrastination and behind these thoughts, this negative thought spiral, but it turns into the double negative of like, why do I still do it? Why am I putting myself down? So how did you get to the point of giving yourself grace? What is something that would help you do that more and more often? Because I think the bullying and beating ourselves up is like, it happens. It just really does happen. So it's happening less and less. But how did you start to do that for yourself? Or what do you say to your clients that are in that space?
I think what I started doing for myself is, it's twofold, really. One, I would get it out of my own head. It is so much easier to work through something when we're not pushing it down and pressurizing it like a diamond. And So I would talk to my husband. I would talk to my coach at the time. I started therapy just right before I got married, actually. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm right now working in very much this camp through therapy. It truly was just get it out of my own head, start verbalizing it, read about it, make me feel less alone about it. I think that's really what it boiled down to. Now, with my clients, I encourage them in a very similar manner. Talk to me about it. If they're experiencing this, like get on Voxer and just talk it out. Because the second we get it out of our bodies, it weighs less. That's a big, huge piece of it. If it is really loud to the point where I am in the fetal position and I haven't had a panic attack in years, thank God, knock on wood. If it's like borderline and it's getting to that point, I give myself a day. Since the 80s and 90s world of personal development, a lot of those personal development gurus have kind of loosened up on the black and white thinking. And so this is actually from Tony Robbins, ironically, but he talks about his 90 rule. If he is just in a shitstorm, he's like, I give myself 90 seconds, 90 minutes, 90 hours, 90 days, whatever, depending on the weight of it. And it's like, we forget a lot of the times that we are allowed to be humans. And I heard this actually from Brene Brown. If we diminish our excitement, our anticipation, our joy in the day-to-day. Because for instance, if it's like, oh, I want to do the speaking gig, but I don't want to talk about how I want it because what if I don't get it? You know, I want to like diminish that joy. I want to diminish that excitement, diminish that anticipation. It doesn't mean that when you don't get it, it's going to feel lighter. It's going to feel the same amount of disappointment, the same amount of frustration, whatever. But it does mean that if you do get it, you don't feel the joy. You don't feel that. And I think a lot of that diminishing the fact that we can feel bad diminishes when we're able to feel good. I don't know if you're very much like this. Like whenever I ask a client, hey, like, how are you celebrating? You did something really cool today. What's going on? And they're like, oh God, I don't know. I have no idea how I'm celebrating. And I'm like, when was the last time you felt proud of yourself? They're like, for longer than 6 minutes? Never. And it's like, okay, we need to talk about this.
That's something we do whenever we set goals. We also set a reward with it. And it's the hardest thing for clients at first to figure out how to reward themselves because their immediate thought is like, well, either there wasn't enough or I already should have done that anyway. So since it's a should, I shouldn't celebrate it. And that is just such bullshit. We're putting this crazy standard. I know you relate to this hard. Putting this crazy standard on ourselves where it's quite the opposite. Like you just said, and like Brene Brown was talking about, like if you can celebrate those small wins along the way and just hype yourself up for doing like the smaller things, it's going to help you be able to hold capacity for joy so much more often. And it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to have that same level of joy when you do have those big, exciting goals come through too. Like you absolutely will. But it's like, we don't have a limit to what that can be. So why are we holding ourselves back to like, we can't do it until we reach this point? It's just human. We do that so often.
Well, I feel like there's so much of this, like when I achieve a certain income per month, then I'll be happy. Like we were talking about this on my show. You're not successful until you achieve 5, 10K a month. You're not lovable until you're married. I don't know if I went to school in Oklahoma. So a lot of people were getting their MRS degrees. And they're like, I can't be worthy until I'm married. I can't be proud of myself until I'm a full-blown entrepreneur. That was a big one for me. I can't be proud of myself and feel like I've made it until I've gone full time. And I was working like 3 jobs on the side, barely keeping my head above water. And I was beating myself up for not being further ahead. I look back at those times and I'm like, you had a superhuman living inside of you. I don't know how I got through that without just crashing into the couch. I probably did actually, but like I just blocked it out. But I then went full time and then it was like, well, it's not until I hit a certain income. And it's like, there's this never ending ladder that we're trying to reach. And if that's our life, we're always living in the future. We're never living in where we are right now. And I think that a lot of high achievers, a lot of perfectionists who tend to be very future forward thinkers think that if we live in the moment, I'm going to be complacent. I'm going to lose all my striving abilities, which by the way is my entire fucking personality. I feel like there's a lot of this dichotomy. It goes back to that black and white thinking that you're either present moment and maybe happy, I guess, but your striver's gone. So then you're not really happy because that's your source of fuel or whatever. Or you continue down this path, which is what you've been doing probably for a long time. And it's produced a lot of great results, but you're not happy. And that's a huge teeter-totter. And it's not one's up, one's down. It's truly both of these get to be equal. But people don't realize that a lot of the time because we don't glorify it.
We don't. It's crazy. I don't know if it's like the millennial high achiever thing, but you were always focused on the next goal and not celebrating. When you do celebrate, it's like, well, what are you going to do next? And you always had to top it. That was the other thing. You always had to beat the last goal, which I also think is a kind of a crazy standard because you're not the same place that you were then. So why are we putting that on ourselves? And I love the idea you said of just like living in the present. You can still be striving towards the future. You can have both. And not only can you, but you need to, because if you said you're always working towards the future, you're floating. You're never going to feel grounded where you're at. You're going to feel dissatisfied every single day on this earth. And what a life is that? Like, it's not living. And so it sounds like you help people really come back to that place of like, yes, you can have those big, scary, exciting goals, but we also need to come back to that balance of being present and all that. So I really want to define, because I want people to identify this as far as like a perfectionist and who they are, like where they fall on that line. Because I know we got a lot of people that maybe identify with that, but you talk about 3 different types of a perfectionist. And so I'm curious, I want to know like where I fall. So I would love to hear a little bit about that. And then we can definitely come back to this a little bit more on finding that balance, because I just think we could talk about that all day.
Well, I love talking about this. And I want to preface before we dive into the 3 types, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, I think I'm all 3. And they're like panicked, wide-eyed. And it's like, that's normal. It's not like the Enneagram where you're one type or one wing 2 or whatever. You tend to fluctuate. We talked about this on my show. Different chapters of your life tend to bring out different types of perfectionism. For me, sometimes I'll go through my day and one project brings out one type of perfectionism. And then I go have dinner with my husband and that brings out a different type of perfectionism, so it's very fluctuating. But the reason I created this is because I started noticing patterns. And I started noticing that when we talked about those patterns, it was very similar tactics to get out of those patterns. But mainly so that when you notice, oh, I'm in, maybe it's the high achiever side of perfectionism, I know exactly how to get out of it. 20 minutes later, oh crap, I'm in the people pleaser perfectionism. I know exactly how to get out of it. It's for those tactical tools, those very left brain thinkers. It really leans into that side. I'll delay no longer. So there's the high achiever perfectionist. This is one we've pretty much been talking about this entire time. It's the person who's constantly on that hamster wheel of achievement. When I achieve this, then I'll be happy. When I achieve X, then I'll be happy, so on and so forth. They also tend to be very to-do list focused thinkers. They tend to lay in bed at the end of the night and be like, I got nothing done today, even though they fucking packed their day, even the 5 minutes. They're like, I can do 5 push-ups right now because I can. It's the people who tend to they listen to a lot of podcasts of the personal development world. They tend to do 75 hard, which is a whole other fucking podcast.
Well, that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other topic. But it's always this idea of what more can I do because I'm not doing enough. Then there's the procrastinator side of perfectionists, which are very similar to the high achiever. Because a lot of people hear procrastinator and they're like, procrastinators are lazy. They don't get anything done, but I call absolute bull, because what I've seen from procrastinators is they're actually harder worker than the high achievers. And high achievers like guffaw when I say that. But it's true, because procrastinators are just filling their day being busy, but it's with a bunch of busy that's actually not moving them forward with what they want. It's the comfortable busy. It's the scrolling on their phone. It's the organizing their email. It's the rewriting their to-do list on 5 different sheets of paper because one's not enough.
Oh my God, that's called out, Nicole.
It's crazy because I see it all the time. And I've actually negated to-do lists basically in my business life, I should say, not so much in personal. But when I heard multiple people say that multiple times, I was like, is this a thing? I can't even imagine it. But it's truly a thing. So if you're familiar with the 80-20 principle, for instance, Pareto's principle, procrastinators tend to really want to go after their goals in these big ways. They have mega goals, by the way. They're like, I want to change the world type of goals. But because they're so focused on just dropping straight into I'm at the highest level of this goal, not what's my next step in this goal from where I am, meeting me where I'm at, basically, they get too overwhelmed, which activates the fight, flight, freeze muscle in our brain, and they flight, which is, let me go do all the little things that'll make me feel productive, that'll make me feel like I'm actually doing things. But then again, they lie in bed at the end of the night and they're like, oh my God, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to help me on my goal today. So they tend to lean more into those 80% tasks rather than the 20 that really launch them forward. Again, going back to Pareto's principle. Then the last one is the people pleaser. They tend to be the people who put others on a pedestal above them. They say, I need to be perfect for this person. In order for me to be perfect for this person, I need to make sure I'm always saying yes to projects. Maybe a boss is saying, hey, I know you're super swamped right now, but I need you to push this by the end of the day. I don't know why he's a good douche nugget, but like, you know, it's like,
Yes, because he's asking that. Yeah.
probably. But so that person immediately says, okay, yes, absolutely. All my other things, like, oh, I can do them later because I need to do this now. So I appear perfect for them, or I appear like I have my quote unquote shit together. But it also shows up in ways with family. This was a big one for me for a long time. I kind of joke that like, oh, I'm definitely the high achiever, but I've really lived in all three of these as well. And the people pleaser showed up for me in ways that like I'd be at the dinner table with my family and I would just be quiet because I was like, I don't have a place in this conversation, or my voice isn't worthy of being voiced right now. I still have to call myself out on that. And even I just got married very recently, and with my new in-laws and new family, I have to remind myself they're not all smarter than me just because they're smart in this one particular area. And it tends to be something that I'm not super intelligent in. But that doesn't mean they're all blanket smarter than me. And it doesn't mean that I don't deserve a seat at this table too. And I think that's the first time I've talked publicly about that. But like it's
powerful.
It's something I really have to be aware. And that's something that people pleasers tend to really fall into, that I want to make sure everyone else is comfortable. And that means I'm not worthy being part of this.
Wow. Oh, gosh. I feel like I really I'm like, check, all three of those. Yes.
That's why a lot of people tend to fluctuate between the three, or like at least mainly two. And that's why I like to preface it, because as we're going through, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's me. But then they hear the next one, they're like, oh crap. Oh my God, am I broken?
But you also said, because I also agree, talking about things more is going to help normalize them. But then also you mentioned like knowing kind of where you're falling, even if it's just in that chapter of your life where you're falling, that's how you can kind of get through it. So what did you mean by that as kind of like, so let's say we are falling into the procrastinating perfectionist, where we're in that fight or flight and we have these big goals, but then we're not really doing the stuff that needs to move us forward. How do we work through that?
So with procrastinators, first and foremost, normally they have about 42 goals they're trying to go after all at the same time, which is why the like fight, flight, freeze muscle is being hit so much, because that overwhelm is just being like constantly activated in their brain. So my first step would be, as much as I know it sounds terrifying and that you're never going to be successful, it's bullshit. Like narrow it down to one, maybe two goals. I like to have maybe like one personal, one professional maximum. Normally I have one that I'm focusing on at any given moment, because it allows me to then go through and say, okay, I'm not going to drop in at level 100. That's okay. I don't want to, because that's again, activating that fight, flight, freeze. So instead of saying, okay, what's level 100? How do I get there as fast as possible and overwhelm myself? I look at, okay, where I am right now. Let's say I'm level 0, because math is hard. I'm at level 0. And what's my first step? What's level 1? And I call these milestone goals. So it's breaking it down into these smaller chunks of goals, which then allow us to be like, oh, I can do, maybe it's run a marathon or something like that. I was really thinking about doing that. And I was like, okay, I wouldn't immediately jump into 20-mile runs. My body would break. Instead, I say, okay, let me start with a 5K. Let me do a 3-mile run this morning and let it be a tempo run. So it's a nice and easy like recovery run, basically. So tempo runs are fast runs. Never, you know what I mean? But like, I'm like, I haven't been a runner for a minute. Stupid foot. But because of that, it allows you to, first and foremost, you start seeing progress, which I will say a lot of high achievers, you might want to do this too. It allows you to see that progress, but more importantly, it allows you to break things down so it feels more manageable, so that because the overwhelm muscle isn't activated, you don't feel like you have to go to scrolling through your phone. You feel like it's a lot clearer to, oh, I can lace up my shoes and go on a 3-mile run. It simplifies things. So really, it just boils down to simplify. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, when they're procrastinators, they hear this and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just do that in my head. That's toddler work, like whatever. Do it on a fucking piece of paper. I dare you. Like, please. Yes. Because if you don't, it just, again, it overwhelms your brain, because our brain can really only hold 3 items at a time. It goes like 1, 2, 3, many. And once we hit many, we're already in the fight, flight, freeze. We're already in reaching for our phone. So do this on a piece of paper, please. Any questions on the procrastinator? I should ask that first.
No, I love that. We do something with like a goal pyramid, essentially exactly what you described, like the big scary goal, but then having the milestones between are huge and celebrating them. And then even the day-to-day things that are going to support getting towards those milestones. So I love how you put that. That's awesome.
I love that you have something similar. That's really good. Then with the people pleaser, it's a lot more ambiguous than the procrastinator, which it frustrates people to no end. But that's truly because I'm just deep dive research on like, what would this be tactically? But since it's so personal, because a lot of the distrust of my own voice or the distrust that I do deserve a seat at the table deals with that self-worth and that inherent feeling of I'm not enough. And because of that, the number one thing I tell people pleasers is just start doing the inner work. And that can look so different for everyone. And I know that a lot of people are like, oh, God damn, inner work, man. Like, but it's real. And
it's true.
It's what you need to do. You and I have both done a lot of it. And because of that, I mean, first and foremost, congratulations, you're already doing it. You're listening to this podcast. Hooray. But it can be starting therapy, starting coaching. It can be listening to a book, going to your local library and picking out a book there. It can be listening to podcasts. It can be YouTube's TED Talks. But just start expanding the knowledge of you deserving a seat at the table outside of what your story is already in your head. Because the story in your head is really not helping you there. So the people pleaser, it is truly just like maybe 20 minutes a day. It can be so simple, but start expanding that horizon of knowledge in this area because it will get you thinking in a different way naturally. What was this last one? The overachiever. I'm trying to go back. The overachiever, they hate it when I say this, and it's so true. Slow the fuck down. Like, it's learning twofold. It's learning how to slow down and not feel like you're not enough. It's learning how to not minimize, but not try to do it all, basically, and actually just do a few core things. I'd recommend immediately read the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown, which is an amazing book. But it's a mixture of slow down and start enjoying the slowdown. By the way, it's going to feel so uncomfortable at first. I know you talk about this a lot on your show. Getting out of your comfort zone, it feels uncomfortable, obviously, and the comfort zone for a lot of high achievers is flooring it on the gas. So when it comes to slowing down, it is not only just like stepping outside of your comfort zone, it's leaping outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes that can be a little too uncomfortable where it freaks them out too much and they immediately go back to flooring on the gas. In those cases, I say some kind of active slowdown, which sounds very weird, but that's like going on a walk. Or I loved a paint by numbers kit for a while. That was a really good one for me because it allowed me to slow down. I'd like listen to a book, or it was never nonfiction though. I would always listen to something just for the sheer pleasure of reading. Now for me, it's laying on my couch outside and popping in my book and doing something sheerly just for Nicole, not for Nicole, the business owner. That's where we're wanting to get to. There's also the double-edged sword here. That is self-compassion is the number one thing high achievers need. There was actually a study done recently, University of Hertfordshire, something like that. Very British, very very that kind of name. They did a study on what are the habits that make people the quote unquote happiest. And they studied drinking water, exercise, smiling, power posing, all this stuff, and then talking kindly to yourself, self-compassion, self-love. And without a flippin' doubt, self-compassion was the highest ROI, is the terrible term for it, but the highest ROI. But it was also the lowest participation, natural participation. So what researchers gain from this is, the number one thing we need to be doing is talking kindly to ourselves. And yet that's the number one thing a lot of us aren't doing.
I could talk about that all day because with self-compassion, that self-talk is like coming back to yourself. And I think the easiest way to do it, because some people really struggle because we're so hard on ourselves, and you tell me if this works, but like I think about either how would you talk to a toddler? How would I talk to like my best friend? And you wouldn't be like, wow, you are so lazy right now reading a book on the couch. How dare you? Why would you do that? Be like, wow, like you're doing so good on that couch right now. Look at you, so cozy. Like you just be so sweet. And being able to take that approach, I'm interested why do we think that's so low? What do you think that it is that's keeping us so low? Are we not valuing the benefit of the self-compassion? Or do you feel like it's like we're humans and we're just constantly punishing ourselves? Why do you think that's low? I mean, I know it is, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I have a lot on this subject. I think my main one, and I think social media has its benefits. So before I just start absolutely dunking on it, let me just go ahead and say I do think it has its benefits. I've been able to connect with some really cool people. Some of my best friends I met through social media. And if I am scrolling through and seeing 50 different people accomplish 50 different things, my brain is not going to say, oh, you, Nicole, you need to accomplish just one of those things. But my brain instead says, you're behind in 50 things. Despite the fact that these are 50 different people on their own timelines doing 50 different things, I'm saying to myself, I'm behind in 50 different areas. I need to go now. And I think this is especially potent in coaches, online coaches, business owners, people on Instagram, because we're just seeing end result, end result, end result, end result over and over and over again. I do think there's a huge pivot happening. And let me tell you, I'm gobbling it the fuck up right now. I love it.
So ready for it.
I'm so ready for it. However, I do think a lot of that was, there for many, many years, and that's just not going to go away overnight. I do think also we hear a lot of stories of like the overnight success, quote unquote, and we just hear those like end result, end result, end result. So we're getting conditioned from all these different areas, from podcasts, from books, from social media, from talking with our friends. How many times do you talk with friends? And this is definitely like old me. I'm very happy that I don't do this anymore. But like a friend would share something good with me and I'd be like, motherfucker, I haven't bought a house yet. Like I would like immediately compare myself.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It was like that competition. I think that it's just always there. So to answer your question, I think that because we're always looking at a lot of people traveling to fucking Italy, starting their business and making $100,000 in 6 weeks, whatever, you are constantly comparing yourself. That's just a natural progression of our brain, is to say, oh, that's where someone else is. Where am I? And because it's been so saturated, it's now how a lot of us think. And it's strengthened that muscle of you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough in our neural pathways. When a muscle is strengthened enough in our neural pathways, it becomes a default. It becomes literally a habit. And a habitual way of thinking is how we're going to go on autopilot throughout the entire day and talk a total beat down to ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it's been a progression, but I don't think it happened overnight. I don't think it's going to go away overnight by any means. But I do think it's something we're starting to wake up to, which I'm like, hallelujah, thank God. Oh my God, I'm so happy.
Yeah, we can't beat ourselves to success or to change. It was for a really long time. It was like that was the go-to and kind of how we approach things. So I do think that we need more self-compassion. And I think you talked about this a little bit earlier about when we are showing up for ourselves and we're doing all that, it's not selfish. Like we can take it and we're like, oh, I feel bad, especially if you're a people pleaser or recovering people pleaser. You almost feel bad for starting to do that. But it's like you talking kindly to yourself, it's not going to make anyone else worse off. It's going to actually help everyone have a higher level of empathy and compassion for one another. It's so important, but it starts with you. I definitely feel like that's the case. And we've kind of talked about this going through the journey. You're identified what kind of perfectionist you are. We're working through, and maybe you're getting to the point where you're able to let it go and you're like, okay, like I'm just letting it go. But now I'm scared, Nicole. What if I get too complacent? What if it's just like, I no longer am trying anymore. I'm just present and I'm not working towards anything. I don't want that. I'm scared that that's going to happen. What's advice you would say to someone there about trying to find that? Am I giving myself too much grace is what I would use for the term. Like, am I giving myself too much grace here? What advice would you give to that? What are your thoughts on that?
I love this question. I've never been asked this question, and it's really getting me thinking in a new way. I like this. I think it really depends on the season of life you're in. So for instance, if someone's in a season of massive rest and healing, I would ask them, why do you feel like you need to have a striving goal right now? Because it's probably a should. If it's a should, it's not a goal. If it's a should, it's a pressure. It's a societal feeling like I need to do something just for the sheer egotistical peacock feather of it. There's no reason for it other than like, oh, look at me, I have a Lamborghini. Man, like it's just fuck off. However, if you've done some really intense healing and you are in that place of, I can wake up in the morning, look myself in the mirror dead in the eye. And I'm not just talking about like, okay, doing my hair, looking at my hair, I'm talking about like looking like this sounds so cheesy, looking at my soul in the mirror, but I really do mean it that way. If I'm looking at myself in the mirror and truly seeing myself, and my first thoughts are something along the lines of, you are worthy as you are, not, oh, look at that hard worker. Look at that little determined blonde in the mirror. Look at her go. Like, I want to instead see myself and see my whole self. And this is something I'm really working on right now. I'll be straight up honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in that season and I'm seeing my whole self, I'm loving my whole self, or I'm at least 60% of the way there. And I'm saying, you know what? In order for me to feel like I'm living big, I am really stepping into this full vulnerable side of myself where I feel like I am that fully exposed and knowing I'm doing it right. If I'm living into that, what does that look like? Is there a particular thing in your life that's in your life in that vision that's currently not in your life? And that's what I'd start asking. Okay, is that the goal here?
Mm.
And then I'd break it down. I'd say, okay, that's your level 100. What's your level 1? Da, 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 da. I go into those systems of it. But I would first and foremost make sure it's from a place of expansion, not from a place of, I need it to look cool. Like it needs to be from a place of expansion.
That's the question you asked of like, why do you feel this way? And I just think that that's something that we don't do enough is like ask why and get to the root of that. And that's just so powerful. And breaking up with the idea of having to do something out of ego or this invisible timeline that we think we're supposed to be on. And just breaking up with that is so powerful. So I'm so glad that you're existing in this world because people need you. Like we absolutely need you. Seriously, like it's just so necessary. There are just people with big dreams. And I love that you're wanting to support those for other people because they should be there, but in a way to where you get to celebrate the whole journey instead of just the end goal. And that's just, it's so needed. It's so needed. So I'm so grateful for you. So glad that we could connect on these episodes. It's been awesome. I do want to shift into some fun rapid fire questions just to get to know you a little bit more. So we're going to shift with that. And yeah, some of them will kind of just make up on the go and it'll be fun, but just don't think too much. Just go for it. You ready?
I'm slightly nervous, but like I'm good.
I want to know, I've asked people like what they're binging on Netflix, but you seem like a reader too. What's a book that you've either recently read, recently finished that was a good page turner for you? And I don't want self-development. You already gave a good one with the essentialism, so you don't have to give me that. I want something that's a little more of like a fun book that you've read or you're currently reading or it's on your next like to-do list to read list.
I am binging, and I'm talking like I started maybe the entire series less than a week ago, and I'm already on book 3, and these are like 24 plus hour audiobooks of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series.
Someone else recommended that. Okay, wait, what is this?
J.Go. Okay, first and foremost, it is like, I'm a huge fantasy person, like I mentioned, like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, like if it's Witcher, like if it is in that realm, I am like, I love it. So I picked up the first book and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. I love it. You pick up the second book, my entire world changed. Like that is I can't even fucking tell you. I can't even tell you. It is like I have not been able to think about anything besides this book series. So 100%, that's the one. I'm on book 3 right now. I'm about to finish it. And then I think I'm going to go back and read them all again before I start the next book because that's the person I am.
I love that for you. Okay, what's your go-to dessert?
Ice cream.
Okay, give me a flavor. Cream. Give me a flavor, a brand, or something at least.
I love a caramel. I'm a big like salty caramel girl. There's this one Jenny's ice cream. I
live down the road from Jenny's. Yes, ma'am.
Oh my! I shared a wall in Chicago. My Chicago apartment shared a wall with Jenny's, and I'd open up my windows and just waffle cones with like waffles.
Oh my gosh, that is the dream.
It was heaven. I loved it. But there is a brown butter. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Oh my God, brown butter almond burnt like
brittle almond brittle. That's it.
Almond brittle. Yeah.
That's my favorite flavor of ice cream on the entire planet. I could eat it all day.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm too pregnant right now, but we get ice cream very often. And Tom, my husband, cannot argue with me about it. It's just like, it's happening and I love it. And it's Jenny's. Jenny's is the one.
Always.
So glad you said that. What was your AIM screen name when you were growing up?
Over 600 dolphins in my room.
Wait, is this a fact or an actual screen name or both?
I still to this day, I love dolphins. I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly. Oh, this cracks me up. I'm a beet red right now.
I love this so much. But, tell me.
I would have like, I had dolphin wallpaper. I had dolphin curtain hangings, you know, like the 2000 curtain hangings on your door. I had like a shrine to dolphins. I had dolphins on my sheet, everything. And one day, for shits and giggles, I counted them all. It was like 642 or something like, it was like a super random number. So I just narrowed it down to over 600 dolphins in my room. And just stuck.
You might be my favorite screen name that I've asked so far. That is like the best. I think dolphin girls might be even better than horse girls. I love me some horse girls, but dolphin girls, oh, next level. Next level. Like
I feel so honored. I can't even tell you. Oh my God.
That might be my favorite one. I'm not even kidding. Wow. I'm just picturing little Nicole counting her sweet dolphins everywhere. And, you know, I love that for you. That makes me very happy. There better still be some ode to that dolphin girl somewhere in your house.
100%. I have dolphins definitely places. Here's the better part to enhance that photo. Yes. I was also wearing my Evanescence t-shirt with like these like baggy, like big cargo jeans that are black with like the chain.
Why does that not, like, those go hand in hand? I feel like Evanescence, dolphin, grunge jeans, like, done.
Oh, what an image. What a time.
That just made me love you more, and I didn't think it was possible. Wow, that's great. Okay, speaking of getting uncomfortable and turning beet red, this podcast, Confidently Uncomfortable, all about stepping outside your comfort zone. And I want you to share with us maybe something you haven't even shared before, but something that you're working towards that is a little bit uncomfortable for you, but that you're excited about. It could be in your business, it could be in your life, it could be best of both worlds if you want to give a little bit, but I'd love to hear, like, it's a stretch for you, but you're really excited.
I, in the past many years, being a very hyperactive mind, being very business focused, I am definitely a recovering workaholic. Dealing with all of those, getting in the mood, if you will, like, with my husband, with partners, was always just like fucking pulling teeth. And it meant nothing about, obviously, my attraction to them, my desire to be with them. It was just like, it was always so far from my mind. And I'm going to be straight up honest with you, J.Go. This book series that I'm reading, I have jumped my husband more times.
I'm done. Y'all, it's better than therapy. Grab those books.
But the reason I bring this up is because one of the things that him and I started talking about as like the sheer fact of me doing something just for Nicole, not for Nicole getting ahead, not for anything other than just like feeding my mind in a way that was so unproductive, made me realize what are some things that I really deeply care about. And that kind of connection is something I really deeply care about. And so it got him and I talking. And so now we have a trade-off every Saturday where we kind of like, design feels like it's so grand. It's not necessarily like that, but where we kind of initiate, for lack of a better term. His was last week. It was awesome. Mine's this week, and so I'm trying to like, I'm
gonna be awesome.
You get to think about it all week. Excited.
Oh, I love this.
Oh my God. I get to think about it all week, and I'm still coming up like, what do I do? Da, 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 da. And I've got a few ideas, but that is something we're both working towards. Me more than him, because he doesn't have that quite as much as I do. But that kind of connection in a way of just like making that at the forefront came from a fucking fantasy book series. Who knew? Like,
yes. Oh my God. I love it. Also, thank you for sharing this because people need to hear that. It's so true. And it doesn't mean anything's like broken or anything like that. We're just like working through this. And I'm so pumped for you. And the fact that you're able to like lean into it more. And if you guys are trying to find that again, it can feel uncomfortable. Even having conversations with your partner can feel really uncomfortable, but it ends up being so fruitful and so worth it. And you're like, oh my God, why didn't we talk about this sooner? Why didn't we try this sooner? Why didn't we, all of those things.
Yes. Well, and also him and I, we've been very open about like what turns us on, what but we were using different language where he thought I was meaning something totally different, which was something that was like, he was having to almost feel like he had to put on a mask, which really got him in his head, which obviously made it not as fun of a task for him. And this past week, we were kind of getting into that pattern where he was really getting into his own head. And I was getting a little frustrated by it. I'll be super honest with you. And we stopped and we talked and we realized that we were both explaining the exact same pacing, the exact same things we wanted, the exact same like verbalizations, to be quite honest. And we were just using different language. And then we fully just like shed it and we just leaned into that. And I was literally in tears at the end because I was like, oh, I feel like we just unlocked something so dear to us.
So powerful.
It was truly, it was just truly one of those moments in our relationship that I will never forget. And that was so special.
I love that. I just think that it's so powerful that that kind of growth and connection came from getting naked, came from feeling good naked.
Really, yes.
Vulnerable. Yeah, like that is so important because our ego could have gotten in the way, like with any of this of like, okay, I'm like not going to tell him like this isn't really what I meant, but I'm not going to communicate that. And same with him on the other end. But instead you're like, wait, let's hold the phone and come back together. And I just think that's such a great lesson. And we can do that in so many different areas of our lives instead of getting caught up with like, okay, like this wasn't perfect or exactly as I planned with anything, with business, with all that. Instead, just slowing down and getting a clear idea of communicating everything. It's so exciting. What a good one to end on. Thank you for being so real on this episode. You're helping so many people, but even just like you showing up as you is helping people. So thank you.
That means the world to me. I'll be straight up honest with you. This kind of taking down these masks is a very new thing for me. My word of the year was heart, because I was sick and tired of speaking from the head, not the heart. And came January, I was like, I'm done with that, because it was exhausting, if I'm being honest. And it's been 8 months of practice. We're recording on August 2nd, which it's been a practice. It's been easier than I thought. I'll be honest with you. It's not been hard. It's been a lot easier than I thought it would be.
You're doing the damn thing.
And that's been a major gift. Yeah, exactly.
You're doing it. I love it. I'm so glad that you did. And we've talked about this a lot, about just showing up as you are. And the more you do it, the better it feels and the easier it is. And it's allowed you to share with random people on a podcast about this thing that maybe we wouldn't have a few months ago. I truly believe showing up and being real about those things is so much more just fruitful in the end, because there's someone out there listening that's like, wow, I really need to hear this today. I really needed to hear this person who, I mean, you are awesome. You are a high achiever. You're doing big things, but like still being real about like, here's other things I'm working on. And here's how to also not be productive. And that's a part of being productive and reaching your goals. And so I just want to say thank you for being here. There's someone here listening, maybe a few someone that are like, I need to work with this girl. I need to figure this out. So how can they learn more about you, get to know you, or even work with you? What are different ways they can find you?
We've mentioned podcasts about 45,000 times. I do have my own podcast. It's called Imperfect Success. So you're going to see a very familiar face on it very soon. That is the primary space that I connect with people for sure. I'm also very active on the Instagram. But that's more, I love doing funny videos. I love doing talk to cameras. I do a lot of like, here's some quick little tidbits on productivity. Here's some quick little tidbits on mindset. However, if you're like, I need personalized tips, I need personalized things, I do free 30-minute discovery calls. And I know you do very similar things. And I think we might be very similar in this way. On these calls, I coach you actively. I want you to know what it's like to coach with me. So whether you sign on as a client or not, whether I'm able to take you on as a client or not, you will leave with very tactical tips on your goals that you are currently working towards. So you can find that at lifecoachbaker.com/discovery call. And you can just sign up for a call right there. Super easy.
I love it. I love that about you, because like that's something where like, y'all, she's giving value for free. It's like, why not? Let's get on it. And then you're going to see the power behind it. And it's just going to make you want to work with her. So,
and I've had people like not sign up with me. And 5 months later, they message me back. They're like, hey, I'm full time in my business because of this call. And hey, I ran a marathon because of this call. And it's like, that's the reason I do this. That means so fucking much to me. It's truly not to me about making the sign up. We talked about this on my show, like hitting the 10K months. Man, it's not about the numbers. It's truly about what can I do to help you get from point A to point B, because you getting in your own way is only going to make you more crazy, and I'm here to help. So take advantage of both of ours. I'm plugging you too. Like, take advantage of both of these, because we are here as resources for you.
It's what makes you the real deal, though. You care about what you do, and you have such a heart for it, and you're constantly researching and growing in your craft. And I'm just like, I love it, y'all. So definitely go subscribe to our podcast, message us and let us know your biggest takeaways from this. If you think you know which procrastinator you are, or if you're all three like me, definitely let us know. But I'm just...
Well, I have to ask real quick, J.Go. Okay, which one do you think you are? Overachiever, procrastinator, or people pleaser?
I'm all three, but I definitely think the procrastinating perfectionist. I do the fight or flight, the breakdown, freeze type situation. Wait, if you could guess, would you have put me in there?
I was thinking, honestly, because you mentioned people pleaser on my show. So I was like, maybe she's a people pleaser, but I remember you saying that you had really addressed that.
Yeah, that's older me for sure.
a lot of business owners tend to live in either the procrastinator or the high achiever.
So
I really don't know. You're kind of a mystery in that way. So I'm glad I solved it. Good.
No, when you said the big scary goal, what did you say? You were like the big goal that's far out there and then like, but not the steps in between. That is something I'm constantly having to coach myself on. And that's why I have a great team around me that helps bring me back to earth and like, let's figure out how to actually make this dream a reality. I could not do it on my own. That's for sure.
I love it. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for being here. Y'all make sure you go listen to her podcast because it's just full of value. And I so appreciate you. And thanks. Can't wait for people to hear this episode. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. This was so fun.
All right.